Welcome back to the InQI Blueprint. I'm Laura Mitchell, here as always with Ali Taranchi. Today, we're peeling back the curtain on something I know haunts every architect, engineer, or builder, even if they don't talk about it much. The way knowledge just gets scattered, lost, or stuck in someone's head. You know, that classic tribal knowledge problem that, frankly, keeps entire projects, and sometimes whole companies, from actually learning and improving.
Yeah, Laura, that's exactly it. All those stories about missing site notes or some old contract detail stuck in someone's inbox, that's not just an inconvenience. That's your schedule and your budget getting more risk by the hour. But the wild thing is, this problem isn't new. I mean, back in the 90s and early 2000s, you saw everyone scrambling for a fix. Document management systems started popping up. Shout out to Documentum and SharePoint if people remember those. And they felt like the big revolution. Suddenly, teams could find files without digging through basement boxes. That was huge.
Totally. For me, starting out, every project had literal binders, so many binders, lined up in some corner office. And then Documentum hits, and you feel like you've entered the future, right? But as much as those systems digitize storage, what they didn't do was capture real organizational learning. I mean, look at finance or tech. Knowledge management, KM, really worked for them. But in AEC, it never stuck. The tools just ended up as, well, smarter file cabinets. And that's not the same as knowing why a team made a decision, or what tripped them up 2 projects ago.
Exactly. In AEC, the focus was different. Other industries use KM to try and connect all the human smarts, how people really think through problems. But for us, production was king. It was all about the next drawing or the next approval. So the tech wave was about putting out work faster, not making sure anyone could find lessons from the last 10 jobs.
And that's how you wind up, years later, with these totally disconnected knowledge pools. Let me actually share a real story, a kind of horror story if I'm honest. On a commercial office job, I lost 2 weeks. 2. Because the CAD file for a foundation depth said one thing, an RFI buried in someone's email said another, and then the engineer's field notes, literal sticky notes on a clipboard, said something else entirely. Talk about whiplash. No single source of truth, just a bunch of silos that never connect. And we paid for it in lost time and a whole lot of stress.
That is the worst, but honestly, it's so typical. It's what happens when an industry is running on tribal knowledge. You're betting the whole project on whether Bob or Lisa remembers the one permit tweak a city inspector made in 2014. And that's a risk AEC just can't afford anymore. So if the first digital wave brought us out of the Stone Age of paper, the second built these digital fortresses, AutoCAD, Revit, GIS, all of it. Amazing for getting the project out the door, but maybe not so great at making sure your whole firm gets smarter every time you finish a build. It's all locked up in project-specific files. And, well, if someone isn't around to explain their system, good luck.
Right, and it's the reliance on key staff that becomes the real bottleneck. I mean, as code compliance officer, I'd get frantic phone calls when someone, the one person who knew where the real answer lived, was out sick. You're sort of creating these single points of failure, but they're humans. And once they retire or move on, years of decisions and workarounds just, poof, walk right out with them.
Yeah, and actually I lived through that while building Bay Scenery. We'd finish a big landscape or design build job, and unless you actively chase people for their notes, the unique stuff we learned, soil weirdnesses, city quirks, just evaporated. So over time you realize we've got project data in a dozen places, none of it connected. That pain, that constant loss, is honestly what drove me toward InQI. If you can turn a firm's collective memory into something you access, not just something you hope doesn't disappear, well, that's a completely different ballgame.
And that's something we've touched on in other episodes. Like when we talked about how site planning is faster and more rigorous now because we have better ways to capture and query the data, not just store files. But that whole process falls apart if institutional knowledge never makes it into a system that everyone can use. So, Allie, how do you make the leap from all this scattered data to something usable, something intelligent?
It's all about breaking these silos. Instead of having PDFs, spreadsheets, and sticky notes drifting around, you need an actual engine that takes that raw context and makes it an asset. Otherwise, you're just building the same wheel over and over, every project, every year. So here's where AI-native platforms change the rules, even the playing field. Vertical intelligence platforms, like InQI, don't just manage files. They structure institutional knowledge across project, account, and public binders. It's like 3 layers: your specific job, your firm's proprietary know-how, and all the code data you need. That layered context is the difference between find me a file and actually answer my question.
You said in a previous episode that AI is only as good as the structure and context you give it. And that totally tracks here. It's more than search. It's context-aware synthesis. So let's talk about these IQ modules. Codes.IQ is the one folks seem to know, right? Instead of spitting out a dozen PDFs, it actually checks your firm's binders, your current project type, and live site intelligence before it tells you if the wall assembly meets fire code. That's a huge leap, especially when you think how most code research is tedious, honestly.
Yeah, and Codes.IQ is just the start. Plant.IQ automates details for landscape specs. Scope.IQ helps automate scoping, and Cost.IQ connects real historical costs to new designs. But the point is, every module draws from a knowledge network that actually learns. And that's the kind of thing that genuinely replaces the tribal knowledge problem. Now, instead of hoping someone remembers, you just ask the intelligent system and get the context-rich answer.
Real intelligence, not just a digital filing cabinet. And it all comes together because of Project CAM. That's the element I find kind of brilliant. You're not just inputting one-way data. You're actually sending real site photos, QA reports, construction changes right back into the system, closing that loop, making the whole platform smarter with every project. Like, finally, the system learns as we do.
Exactly, Laura. Every job is its own lesson. With InQI, you're not just storing history, you're actively building the next set of smarter answers each time. It's not perfect yet. This stuff's evolving fast. But suddenly, efficiency is no longer about how fast someone forwards an email. It's about how quickly the right, actionable knowledge surfaces at exactly the right time.
So to everyone listening, what's different now isn't just technology. It's how quickly the industry can institutionalize its experience and put it to work everywhere. That phrase, operational nervous system, that's not a throwaway line. It really is the next step. And, honestly, it's exciting to see the AEC world finally breaking out of the knowledge silo trap.
Couldn't agree more. I think the next few years are going to redefine what project delivery looks like. But that's another episode we'll have to dig into soon. Laura, thanks for sharing your war stories and for making me a little nostalgic for those old paper binders. Not that I want them back, just to be clear.
Not unless you're volunteering to carry him up 3 flights of stairs, Allie. But really, thanks to everyone tuning in. We hope today gave you a blueprint for thinking differently about knowledge, what you have, what you might be losing, and how AI is finally giving it all back. Stick with us, because the next step is figuring out how this new nervous system changes daily life for every role on the team.
Looking forward to it, Laura. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on the InQI Blueprint. Until next time.
Take care, Allie. See you soon.